This is CBC Vancouver News.
The impact is immediate for businesses. This is going to really paralyze trade.
Still no end in sight to the port strike, and if it continues for a week, it'll amount to $500 billion in paralyzed trade.
I'm just disappointed that this is sort of where we're at. I think that the decision is discriminatory.
An education assistant who made headlines for posting racy content online has now hired a lawyer claiming discrimination.
Cautiously optimistic, but it'll be really interesting to see what real enforcement will happen.
And relief from locals as a company caught illegally dumping thousands of tons of waste near Cultus Lake is now trucking it away. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Talks between the union representing port workers and their employer remain stalled as day 4 of the strike comes to a close. Tonight, there are more calls for the federal government to step in. The strike is costing businesses billions of dollars as the impasse continues. Susanna De Silva has more on the economic fallout.
The port behind me, you can see, is very quiet. Nothing is moving, nothing's going in, nothing is coming out at this point. A statement from the union a short time ago put the blame solely on the employers, that it was the employers that walked away from the table, that they are willing to come back at any hour to resume negotiations. They say the major issue is around contracting out of maintenance work. That is the employer that will not agree to a document that has been drafted and is complete, except for one sentence, they say. On the other hand, the employers say it is up to the union, that they are ready to go back to the bargaining table at any point, as long as the union puts forward what they call, quote, a reasonable proposal. Now, the calls are growing for the federal government to step in to legislate those workers back to their jobs, but that isn't something the federal minister has indicated at this point. He sent out a tweet today saying they are committed to the federal mediators, going on to say that we encourage both parties to immediately return to the bargaining table and remain there until a deal is reached. That collective bargaining is hard work, but it's how the best, most resilient deals are made. So again, not indicating they're willing to step in at this point anyway. The federal NDP also saying that they would not support back-to-work legislation. Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association talked about the fact that about 16% of all goods are coming through BC ports. That's about $500 million every single day. They want the federal government to step in. We did speak to some trucking companies who are at almost a complete standstill now. One of them saying they have a lot of drivers they've maintained on call are still paying other employees because they are afraid to let them go and then not be able to get them back. But they say at some point that will have to change. They won't be able to continue doing that. Other companies in construction saying, if one trade gets delayed, that delays others, and there is a cascading effect. We also spoke to a company, they do furniture manufacturing. They custom bring in furniture for people, and they are worried about how long this strike could go.
Everything is made specifically for our clients. It's not like we have inventory that's ready in stock. So our entire business model is built off of made-to-order lead times. With an 8 to 12 week lead time, it sounds great in theory, but if it becomes 12 to 16 or 20 and more, it really does hurt our businesses, and people do get upset, and understandably, they had expectations that we just couldn't meet.
And there is concern that some of those clients could say they want refunds because those deadlines were not met. Now, again, a lot of them saying that is still a little bit early. There is leeway there. Experts saying a lot of businesses have learned to adapt, especially after COVID. They might have more stock on hand. They build in more contingencies, but it is harder for smaller businesses, rather. And at this point, experts say it is hard for businesses to plan.
For many businesses, it's a catch-22. Once they start making arrangements for alternative routes that are more expensive and they may be locked into that and the strike ends earlier than they thought, they're on the hook for the higher expenses. At the same time, they're not making those adjustments, then they may not get deliveries. And in any case, at a higher cost and at delays.
And he says, really we're looking at 1 to 2 weeks maybe where you really begin to see those cascading effects. So a lot of people watching very closely because those impacts could start piling up very quickly.
Well, meanwhile, the head of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce says first and foremost, businesses will feel the immediate impact of the strike with far-reaching ripple effects.
So we're going to start seeing ships in the ports unable to unload. We're going to see bottlenecks in our rail lines that can't move goods through the country anymore. And we're going to see increased truck traffic from diverted trade that goes down to the U.S., bringing our business to the U.S. ports and then trying to find its way back up to Canada.
He says $800 million in trade is at stake every single day. If the strike drags on a full week, that amounts to $5.5 billion of disrupted trade. In other news now, the man who attacked an Uber driver in Abbotsford has been sentenced to 1 day in jail and a year's probation. This video, you may remember, is from April. It shows the passenger repeatedly punching the driver in the head. The BC Prosecution Service today confirms William Tickle pleaded guilty to assault. He has received credit for the 44 days he spent in custody before sentencing. He's also been ordered to pay a $100 victim surcharge. This case sparked calls for better protections for gig workers like ride-sharing drivers. An education assistant in Port Coquitlam has been fired over her second job. As Liam Britton explains, the single mom had an OnlyFans account with racy online content to help make ends meet. But the school district calls that egregious misconduct.
Kristen McDonald says she was only taking home about $1,000 every 2 weeks as an education assistant at a Port Coquitlam high school.
It's just not enough.
That's why she was also Ava James, who posted adult photos and videos on social media accounts like OnlyFans.
That was very bothersome to them.
Them being the school district she worked for. They told her to stop posting adult content, but she refused. Last month, they fired her.
In this day and age, we should be able to, do what we want as long as it's not illegal. I'm not hurting anybody.
The school district said in a termination letter that McDonald disparaged the district in media interviews, posted content that sexualized the school environment, and connected her school work to her adult content work through interviews and capitalized on that connection. McDonald says she's put in for a grievance with her union. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
And an update on this story, McDonald has hired a lawyer now who says they'll be pursuing a human rights complaint claiming sexual discrimination.
So regardless of whether or not the reasons are good or grounded or sufficient or legal, if they're discriminatory or even if they carry the sort of scent of discriminatory motivation, I think that can be highly problematic.
As for School District 43, which runs public schools in the Tri-Cities, it says in a statement that all employees are treated equitably. Well, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister says she is concerned about the safety of Indian diplomats in Canada. This after seeing a poster promoting a protest over the death of Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Nijjar was shot and killed a few weeks ago outside a Gurdwara in Surrey. He was a vocal supporter of an independent Sikh state. A poster promoting an upcoming protest near Toronto shows photos of India's 2 top diplomats in Canada and calls them killers. In a statement, Minister Melanie Joly says Canada takes its international obligation to uphold the safety of foreign diplomats very seriously. A company found to be illegally dumping waste on a property near Cultus Lake has started cleaning it up. Residents first noticed the waste months ago and filed complaints, fearing it could contaminate their local water supply. Now, as John Hernandez reports, they are happy their efforts have paid off, but are still left wondering just how long the removal will take.
I've said from the beginning that we wanted it stopped. We wanted it cleaned up.
These waste piles still stink, but there is also elation in the air in this small community near Cultus Lake.
It was the smell of success. The word I want to try and hang my hat on is vindication.
Columbia Valley resident Darcy Henderson watched a truck roll in last Wednesday and haul out a load of waste. She was among the first residents who filed complaints as this makeshift landfill emerged in her community last year, fearing it could contaminate the local water supply.
We're very pleased that the truckloads have started to leave. It's a teaspoon at a time. There's certainly not the robust number of trucks taking material out as there was bringing material in.
The waste was unloaded by the company Fraser Valley Renewables on a property owned by farmer Bruce Vanderwick. The company said it was meant to enhance the soil, but complaints led to a visit by provincial inspectors who found it was so contaminated with garbage that the piles amounted to an illegal waste dump. A stop work order was issued in December. The Agricultural Land Commission ordered that removal begin by June 14th. The first truck rolled in about 2 weeks after the deadline. Local leaders say navigating regulations and finding out just who could stop it was time-consuming.
It was frustrating. I think that was part of the challenge, and my hope really is that that's something that can be improved upon down the road, because our thought was this is a big deal.
CBC News has reached out to the company for comment on the waste removal. The ALC says the waste must be gone in a year and the soil remediated. It's also considering fines. Residents hope regulators keep up the pressure.
We're excited, cautiously optimistic. We're going to work closely with the ALC, and they've done a good job of communicating so far, but it'll be really interesting to see what real enforcement will happen, right? How are we really going to make it painful enough for them to, this is a vast amount of waste.
As for where this waste is going next, the ALC says it doesn't know, but told the company it can't be dropped off at another farm. John Hernandez, CBC News, near Cultus Lake.
A massive fire has gutted a building in downtown Vernon. It happened early this morning, ripping through several business units. There are no injuries, but a nearby apartment housing homeless and at-risk residents was evacuated just as a precaution. The fire is considered suspicious. Several roads were closed for much of the day as crews worked to demolish the building. Over to Vancouver Island, a new wildfire is burning in the Sayward Valley. The Browning Creek fire here is about 2 hectares in size. It's currently listed as out of control. The flames are growing closer to homes, so the local fire department has been working to protect about 12 structures in case the blaze shifts directions.
Came home and there was the retardant jets going over and water bombers and helicopters, and they've been going steady, so hopefully they can get it out.
Right now we're pre-positioning water bladders, like that one over there, and in 2 locations, and then we're going to put house protection units in place and lay hoses, just in the event that the fire spreads.
The Coastal Fire Center says this fire is human-caused, and while the wind is posing a few challenges, it hasn't grown significantly tonight. Well, back in Vancouver, dozens rallied in support of a summer camp today after reports of threats against staff. Carousel Theatre for Young People is hosting a summer camp that lets children use drag as a tool for artistic creation. But the union representing theatre stage employees says staff have been bombarded with hateful messages, even facing threats of physical violence. The Vancouver Police Department says it is aware and officers are monitoring the situation.
Everything is about love and acceptance, and is fighting for the rights of equity-deserving people, especially people that are trans, people that are in the Two-Spirit LGBTQAI+ community.
In response to the protest, the theatre has also set up a fundraiser to hire security to keep staff and campgoers safe. Well, some lucky kids got to take part in a very special basketball camp today, hosted by Raptors superfan Nav Bhatia. The Canadian businessman founded the Superfan Foundation to unite people through the love of the sport.
A kid to make the kids feel, give them the confidence and have them feel like they are being drafted into a WNBA or a NBA team. They get their lockers, they get their uniforms, they get their drills.
Bhatia says he's grateful for the opportunities he's been given and wants to pass it on. The foundation is a nonprofit organization that raises money to build basketball courts and camps for kids here in Canada and right around the world. Today's participants were basking in the star treatment.
It feels really nice. I feel like an NBA player. They taught me how to do my layups more smoothly.
It's really nice, and I really like the message that it's kind of like sending, so it feels really good to be here.
This year, by the way, is the first time the foundation has run the program in BC. The sold-out camp runs until Thursday in Langley.
It's ironic and it's tragic that he is one of his own statistics today.
Coming up, we hear from loved ones of the man who died of a suspected overdose just weeks after opening a Vancouver store selling hard drugs, a shop he said would provide a safer supply. We'll have more on that story after the break. Stay with us. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. A Newfoundland artist's designs have turned up on other websites without permission. The pieces, which feature landscapes and mermaids, were being printed on T-shirts and sold online. But it turns out there's not much that can be done about the plagiarism.
I'm a traditional artist, so I work in ink and watercolors using a paintbrush, as well as pens and stuff. So I do a lot of kind of Newfoundland-inspired landscapes, and I also do a lot of narrative illustrations featuring women and mer people and animals and werewolves and monsters and stuff like that. Well, at the time, I'd been doing a lot of mermaid illustrations anyway, but, you know, when I seen the Merboz calendar, it kind of inspired that particular design. So, yeah, I illustrated that, and it's since become one of my most popular images, really. I think people were just excited to see mermaids that, you know, were men and were more diverse, and it's just a really colorful, fun print, and I think people resonated with it. So I had like an 8x10 one and a 11x14, and I sold them locally and also online. Well, I got a message on my Instagram saying, "Hey, I seen this shirt, and I know it's your design. Like, did you know about this?" Like, they were just kind of checking in, and I seen that print had been put on a kind of a button-up shirt and sold on this website, and that was really discouraging to see. And there was a lot of other people's like stolen art on the website as well. And since then, like a few more websites have popped up. They seem to be quite similar. I don't know if it's all the same company or whatever, but they seem to be just kind of manufacturing shirts with stolen art, including mine. It sucks, The pandemic has not been easy for artists. Well, it's not been easy for anybody, but it's been a struggle, and to think that, some company might be making money off my stolen image, it hurts. I sent an email and said, "Hey, like, this is my, design. Can you please remove it?" And so they said, "Okay, well, we'll remove it." And they did. But like I said, then they came with, they put another shirt up with another stolen design. So I don't know what I can do, because I'm sure this company is overseas. So I don't know how to go forward, basically. I'm kind of trying to speak to local lawyers maybe and see, is there anything I can do? But I'm not holding out much hope that I'll get, a big compensation for what they sold or anything. I would say support local artists. If you can buy something from them, or, that they made with their own two hands, or even like, share the work online, and make sure that the designs that you're buying, maybe on a website, are from a reputable source, I guess. Yeah, just support local artists, I would say.
Welcome back. A man known for opening a store to sell drugs on the downtown east side is being remembered as a kind and loving person. Jerry Martin opened a makeshift shop that was open for only a day before police shut it down. As Yasmin Vernon tells us, his family says he died from an overdose last week.
We're on our way to talk to Krista Thomas. She's the partner of Jerry Martin, who died on Friday of a suspected fentanyl overdose. But in May, he opened a drugstore selling tested cocaine, heroin, and other illicit drugs because he wanted to give people a safe supply of drugs.
As far as I know, the overdoses have tripled now. So without a clean, safe supply, it's just going to get worse.
It was illegal to do so, but he knew he could be arrested, and he was arrested just less than 24 hours after he opened the shop. But he told us one of his goals, if he was arrested, was to launch a constitutional challenge arguing for a legal, safe supply of drugs in Canada. So we're standing at Main and Cordova right now, where Jerry had his store. How does it feel being here right now?
I think that I haven't had time to process what has actually happened as of yet. So surreal is kind of the only thing that I can think to say.
Martin was found unresponsive in a vehicle last Tuesday. He was taken to hospital and put into a medically induced coma. Days passed, CT scans showed he had significant brain damage, believed to be caused by a drug overdose. He'd only have primitive functions, such as swallowing and coughing. His partner and mother made the difficult decision to end his suffering and pull him off life support.
So let's go back a little bit and talk about Jerry and who he was. He lived a million lifetimes in this lifetime, having been on the streets himself for several years, conquered addiction for 15 years. He'd been on both sides of it, and he could truly relate and connect to people on either end. And that's essentially why he wanted to do this project, was, you know, to bridge the understanding that addiction happens, and it's ironic and it's tragic that he is one of his own statistics today.
How was he a few days before his death? I was looking on Facebook on his profile, and he had posts about how he had no place to stay and he had lost his drug vault.
Following the first arrest, you know, he was stopped by police again. They seized a second vehicle, and the financial turmoil that kind of came with the first arrest followed by the subsequent ones, it snowballed. For the amount of times that man has been knocked down in his lifetime, he always got back up. And I think I just thought he'd get back up. We know that he wouldn't be carrying a supply that could ever be tainted or cross-contaminate with other supplies, but the fentanyl was found in his system, and so it begs the question whether he had his own supply that day or made an impulsive decision.
Martin's partner will now lead the fight to launch a constitutional challenge.
It is a big undertaking that has a large price tag associated with it. There's enough people that would love to continue this in his name.
I got a statement from the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and she sends her condolences to Jerry's loved ones. And she says the toxic drug crisis demands that we use all of the tools in our toolbox, and that includes safe supply.
And you are looking at a live shot of Burrard Inlet facing north. Well, the heat sure settled in today, so just how high will the mercury go? We'll time out your 5-day forecast coming up next.
About 1,500 tourists are stranded in the remote town of Stewart, British Columbia, following a spectacular fire that destroyed the only bridge leading out of the community. The 91-meter wooden bridge on the Alaska-BC border went up like kindling. Arson is suspected. We have this report from Larry Rose.
An old wooden bridge used to go across the Bear River right here. That is, until yesterday. The bridge caught fire, and today, well, there's not much left of it. The fire cut off all traffic south to the rest of BC. This highway is the only way into Stewart or out of it. Police are looking into the possibility the fire was deliberately set.
It was in the afternoon.
Yeah, about 2 in the afternoon?
Yes.
And the bridge was gone in how long?
After about 2 hours, it was down.
The bridge fire might have merely been an inconvenience, except that this week about 1,500 tourists are in Stewart for 50th anniversary celebrations. So far, the residents and tourists are taking the whole thing calmly.
I don't know. I've never seen anybody that was too concerned yet.
But frankly, in Stewart, the biggest problem is finding something to do. The only road left open is a 2-mile strip down to nearby Hyder, Alaska. So what's for everybody to do?
Just go get Hyderized.
Hyderized? What does that mean?
Drinking over the other side in Hyder.
Yeah? The pub over there.
Yeah.
The Department of Highways crews are continuing to work at full speed. But even so, it's going to be afternoon on Thursday before a temporary bridge can be put in place. Larry Rose, CBC News, Stewart.
Some people call the Stewart building a landmark.
For 73 years, it stood next to Stanley Park with the more modern apartment blocks of the West End behind it. But on Tuesday, it could be a pile of memories, something the people at today's rally don't want to see.
This building, I think, is a very special landmark to the people of Vancouver. Even if people don't know it by name, they certainly know it by sight. And it has some very unique architectural qualities. For example, in the bay windows, which are very typical of early turn-of-the-century wood frame apartment buildings. And probably the most special architectural detail of this building is the turret. And our city, we need new buildings and we need old buildings. And if we lived in a city that just had all new buildings, we wouldn't have any character to our city.
The decision to demolish the Stewart building comes after the fire marshal declared it unsafe a few months ago, then ordered it be torn down or fixed up. Since then, about 2,500 people have signed a petition to save the building, and the protesters are now hoping public pressure will get council to change its decision by Tuesday.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The 15th annual Latincouver Festival continues to July 20th, and CBC Vancouver is proud to be the exclusive media partner. Enjoy a series of sensational Latin American experiences and the popular Carnaval del Sol Festival. And the Herb Original is a new CBC British Columbia podcast. Stream it today on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
And our meteorologist, Russ Lacate, now joins us with a look at the forecast. And Russ, just like you said yesterday, right on cue, that wildfire smoke created a bit of a haze over Metro Vancouver today.
Yeah, a bit of a milky sky out there, absolutely. Kind of muted the sunshine somewhat, although the heat was ramping up. I know this is a familiar graphic. We've been looking at it a lot lately. Let's take another peek. The forest fire danger rating map province-wide. I'm a bit concerned because we're not seeing anywhere near enough of the low as things have really ramped up across the southern interior. Still extreme over Vancouver Island, parts of the northwest as well. Your high today, it was a hot one. I mean, we're talking about temperatures. We got up to 31 degrees in Kamloops, 31 in Osoyoos, Port Alberni, 31 and change in between hours. Is it going to stay that hot for a while? Well, maybe for a couple of days. We have some cooling relief coming in the extended outlook. We'll take a peek at that right now. Our offshore high, if you could imagine, the ridge is basically extending all the way through the Yukon and keeping most of the province completely dry. But we'll see a little bit of a subtle sort of a wiggle, a shift back and forth with that high moving offshore and then gliding closer to the coastline over time. And so that when we get to Friday morning, Friday afternoon, a lot of low cloud and fog here that'll shroud the west coast of Vancouver Island. We'll get a strong inflow through the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and it's going to usher in some cooler air around the south coast. I don't think we get the showers, not here in Metro Vancouver. They'll be on the backside of the Coast Range Mountains. This graphic overplays it somewhat, but you can anticipate at the end of this week some scattered showers showing up over higher terrain for parts of the interior. Of course, that's later this week. What about tomorrow? It's still a rather warm day. 29 for Williams Lake, 33 in sunny Kamloops, a little bit of haze on the coastline, 29 in Victoria. In the lower mainland, it's a hot one, maybe the hottest one in the series, 31 degrees for Langley. Estimating 32 for Chilliwack, just off our little map there. And it's only on the beaches where you'll end up with temperatures in the mid-20s. Your 7-day outlook, it includes lots of sunshine. The cooler phase comes in time for the weekend. Saturday, a breezy 23, maybe a chance of showers by next Tuesday.
All right, no question, we are well into July now. Thanks so much, Russ.
You bet.
And that is your late news for this Tuesday. For news anytime, be sure to check out cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition. That's on CBC Radio 1 starting tomorrow morning at 5:30. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.